Welcome to another Carlo and Loads Sports Show. I'm Robert Laidlaw.
I'm Sean Carlin.
Now, Sean, we've had the grand final of the season with the AFL grand final between the West Coast Eagles and Collingwood Magpies, and the excitement being there was two former Central District players on each side. Shannon Hurn captained the West Coast to the premiership, and Travis Varcoe was an important player for the Collingwood Magpies.
And it was a great grand final. I'm going to be honest and tell our listeners that I didn't actually get to watch it on TV, which is maybe un-Australian of me, but I was listening to it on my phone, and it was like obviously a real grand final. You were there.
Yeah.
So what was it like?
Well, I suppose I didn't watch it on TV either, so does that make me...
Well, some people are lucky enough to actually watch it at the ground.
100,022 people.
And you were the 21st and 22nd.
Yes, with Sammy. Yes, correct. But it was a very eerie feeling. I've been to, it's my fourth AFL grand final that I've been to, but it's the first time.
Rub it in, no problem.
Oh, sorry about that, Sean, but it's the first time where I really honestly didn't mind who won the game. I just wanted a good game of footy. Like I said, I had a boot in each camp with the two Centrals lads. But other than that, all I wanted was a great game of footy. In fact, I would have been happy with an extra time component. The scores are tied at the end and we go on like that. I would have been extremely happy with that.
Well, it was a very close grand final, and really, from what I can gather, listening to it on the radio and from talking to you earlier, like it was obviously one of those games where it went right down to the wire, and people couldn't leave their seats. It wasn't like the premiership before, when unfortunately the game was over pretty early, and West Coast all year. You just can't write them off. And, I mean, even though at the start of the season, all the experts wrote them off and didn't think they'd be around the mark, they'd shown all year that they just don't give up.
Yeah, look, they've got some special marking power in the defence and two forwards. That's probably proved the difference in the end, was their capable marking in crucial areas to repel attacks and to set up attacks.
So tell us about the whole game, like from the beginning. What was the entertainment like, the feeling in the crowd? Like, obviously, Collingwood are a big club, one of probably the most iconic AFL, VFL / clubs in Australia. One of those sort of teams that polarise people. That's why I went for West Coast. But that must have been an interesting...
Well, my son and I walked around Melbourne sort of previous for a couple of hours, and we were both surprised at the number of West Coast supporters going around the place. We figured all of Melbourne, that barracks for anyone but Collingwood, hated Collingwood so much that they bought West Coast gear, because a lot of it looked fairly new gear. And at the ground now, I was there last year, and there were a lot of Crows supporters, but they were easily outnumbered by Richmond supporters. This year, I thought West Coast outnumbered Collingwood supporters.
Interesting. I think you're probably right. And as I said, they are that polarising team, and people either love them or they don't love them.
Now, the pre-game entertainment, in my opinion, was a lot better than last season, because our seating arrangements this year was on top of the music, so we heard it clearly. And they had Jimmy Barnes, and they had another group that was an American group that was really entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. But last year they had the Killers, and I was the other side of the stadium, and it was echoey, so it didn't sound very good at all. So Black Eyed Peas was the American group. I was just trying to get my mind around what they call these groups, but show my age a little bit here. But I really enjoyed it, and of course they had Mike Brady singing his One Day in September. Very enjoyable. I'd give it 8 out of 10 for the pre-game, whereas last year I would have given it 5.
And what about the first quarter? Collingwood got out to a good start. I think they kicked 5 goals to no goals from West Coast. Was that
5 straight to 1 point getting into time on, and then West Coast got a couple of late goals. So
the supporters must have been up and about.
Yeah, they were 3 goals up at quarter time. The best part about it was Travis Varcoe kicked the first goal of the game, and I remember when he was playing for Geelong, he did the same thing. I think in 2011 he kicked the game's first goal. So I would have liked to have had a dollar or two on him kicking the first goal.
Let's go back in time and talk about Travis, because as you mentioned, he was a Centrals boy. And interesting, I remember going to the under-17 grand final, I think 2004.
Yep.
I did a little bit of work for the club back then, helping out the conditioning for the 17s and 19s. And I remember Travis kicked a goal that I just couldn't believe. The ball was going to bounce through the points, clearly. And he ran through the goals. And you think, at the time I thought, who thinks of that? But he ran through the goalpost, reached across and tapped the ball back. So before it crossed the line, he tapped it back onto the ground, kept running, picked it up and kicked the goal. And it was amazing because all the other players, you thought, they actually thought, it's going to go through a point. And he just didn't quit. He kept going. Wow, you could see he was a special player.
Well, it's really the mark of the Indigenous player that they have this little touch of magic, and they think of all these things out of left field like Travis did then. And it's one of the reasons I admire the Indigenous players so much, that they come up with these types of things and you never forget them.
No, I haven't. And, when you mention, well, we were talking about Shannon and Travis being part of this grand final, I remember back to that moment, and I still think it's something that is vivid, because I just thought, who would do that? But someone of his calibre would.
Yeah, now of course, Travis, he started with Centrals in the league. He had a couple of games, I think it was back in about 2005 or thereabouts as a 17-year-old, but he got injured and he missed a lot of the season. And then he got drafted by Geelong, and all told he played 138 games for Geelong and 2 premierships, 09 and 11. And something interesting, in 09, his first premiership, he set up a crucial goal late in the game when the scores were tied, and he sort of set that goal up, which put him 6 points up, and then someone else kicked a goal, so West Coast won that by 2 goals against St Kilda. And then, of course, he not only did he kick the first goal in 2011, I think he kicked the first 2, and then he kicked a real magic goal in the fourth. They won that by 6 goals. So he's got those 2 premierships. So wouldn't it have been nice, with the unfortunate passing of his sister Margaret earlier in the season from playing women's football, it would have been a real high moment for him to have played in another premiership team and dedicated to his sister's memory.
Yeah, you can only imagine the sadness there with their family. But, Collingwood did a great job to get to the grand final and again put on a great display. And Travis, as always, is an electrifying player and showed that again.
If he'd played one less AFL game, the grand final would have been his 200th game. In fact, it was his 201st game. So that's quite a good moment for the lad. And interestingly, he played with Geelong in a very successful period, and he's the fastest player to have notched his 100th win. It was in his 113th game. He played in 100 winning games. That's an amazing stat.
That's not a bad team to be part of.
Yes, and as for Shannon, obviously, Shannon's record speaks for itself. I think he was 16, he played in an under-19 premiership team in 2003 with Centrals. And then in 04, he's a little bit of a controversial selection for the grand final. So he played in the premiership in 04, which was the record 125-point win over the Eagles. And he backed it up the following year with another premiership. And he kicked a real booming goal in that game in the last quarter, where one of the Gowans boys, I think it was James Gowans, handballed to him near the 50-metre, and Shannon come skirting through, grabbed the ball, let fly from outside the 50, went straight through the centre.
Fabulous.
Very memorable. And, of course, he had a rookie contract with Saka. He was a 2-sport star when he was a kid. He obviously gave that up in the second year when he got drafted by the West Coast. And, of course, now he's captain. Last 3 years as captain, he's a premiership captain. He's unbelievable. And he comes from good stock. His father, William Hurn, Bunga is a name that he's inherited from his dad. William, 135 league games with the Doggies. And his grandfather, Brian, who was a mayor for many years out in the Barossa around Angliston Way, where the family comes from. And Brian actually played in the successful South Australian Sheffield Shield team in 63-64. So there's some pretty good genes. Yeah, right through. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember watching a under-15 Barossa game when Shannon was playing for Angliston, and it was the grand final, and they were playing South Gawler and they lost. But interestingly, Shannon was playing for Angliston, and on the winning side was Sam Butler for South Gawler, who'd just converted from soccer, and of course they were teammates for many years at West Coast.
Wow, interesting. Small world, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, Shannon got the AFL Rising Star nomination in 2007 when he started playing with the West Coast. And finally this year, he was made an All-Australian in the seniors, but he wasn't captain. He was the only captain, I believe, in the team, but they overlooked him for captain, but it doesn't matter. He's All-Australian, mate.
He's had a long, distinguished career now, hasn't he, to top it off? And not that this is the end of his career by any means, but certainly to now be a captain of the premiership team is a fabulous.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to when he retires and from AFL and comes back to Central District.
And when did you think the game changed? Like, obviously, Collingwood got out to a great start, and slowly West Coast just chipped away. But even it seemed to be goal for a period of time. But could you feel that there was going to be a change? Were West Coast the better team, or were they the luckier team?
Honestly, no. It was one of those games that even though Collingwood got out to 5 goals, West Coast were making mistakes, and even Shannon had a pretty slow first quarter, made a couple of mistakes, and you just had this feeling that when are they coming? When are they coming? And of course they got those 2 late goals, and then 3 goals the difference at quarter time, 2 goals at half time, and it was even at 3/4 time. And I think that reflected the evenness of the game up to that stage. Even though Collingwood got the 5 goals, West Coast missed a couple, and then Collingwood missed a couple, and you would suggest that it was a very true reflection of the game at 3/4 time. In the last quarter, Collingwood got the first 2 goals within 2 minutes, then West Coast got a quick goal, then Collingwood got a goal, and then it sort of stayed that way. With there was a goal from West Coast, and it went to within a 6-point range for about, it seemed like 20 minutes. It seemed forever. And West Coast kept chipping away, and they missed a couple, and they got 4 points in a row. And Collingwood hang on with 2 points, and then there was this mark. There was a bit of controversy about a shepherding free, but it wasn't paid. The guys got the ball 40 metres out on the boundary. The hardest shot that they had in the last quarter, after all those misses, there's no way you would have expected a goal. The guy went back. He didn't do anything fancy. He just drop-kicked it straight through the centre.
Sheed.
Yes, he was.
Kicked 1 goal,
yeah,
and that was it.
Yeah, and the winning goal.
But that's the one you needed.
Absolutely. And, I was right behind it from my seat, and I'm watching it. I'm thinking, off the boot, I'm thinking, it's got to be a goal. And it did not go offline at all. It just went straight through the centre of the goals. And you're looking at the goal umpire, and you can see the goal umpire hasn't moved an inch either. And you're looking at the players, and all the players know it's a goal. And, of course, after that goal, it went back straight to the West Coast forward area, and the guy drops a mark right on the goal square, and that got rushed for a point. That was West Coast's chance to, end the game with just 5.
Was that Darling that dropped the mark?
Yeah, it was.
He's been a key player all year.
I know, but I suppose he did take his eyes off the ball, and that's why he dropped it. His recovery was good. He gathered the ball, but the pressure sort of forced it over. And on the kick out, my thinking was, this is just the last chance Collingwood has to rush it down the ground and get a goal. And that's the way they played it. They played it straight down the guts, but the siren beat them, and West Coast won. And when you see all the Collingwood guys lying on the ground and obviously exhausted, and the West Coast guys celebrating, they've got the extra energy to celebrate, of course, when you win. And it was just a fantastic finish to the game.
Yeah, and so West Coast only hit the front with less than 2 minutes in the game. That was the first time they were they leading at any other point?
Yeah, late in the third quarter, they got 2 points up on there was a bit of controversy when the Collingwood player had it in the back pocket, and he was trying to pass it to a teammate, and the Collingwood runner cut his path, and the West Coast player came in and marked the ball and kicked the goal to put West Coast 2 points up late in the third quarter. Collingwood took the ball forward and managed to get 2 points to level the scores at 3/4 time. That short period of time that West Coast were 2 points up or 1 point up went for a couple of minutes, plus the last, I think it was 100 seconds, a minute 40, was when they kicked the goal that put them in front for good.
Yes, well, it's a really fitting grand final. That's the type of game you want. There's always got to be a winner and a loser, but well done to West Coast.
Well, thank you. So ends another Carlo and Loads sports show, the last footy show for the year.
Well done.